How's it going, everybody? Lampini here again, and today we are going to be going over Week 17 of the 2024 NFL season. Now, as you guys probably noticed, I usually wear the sleeveless Muscle Man shirts. It's very cold in the house today, so I actually decided to put on an actual jacket. So I'm a bit warmer today, so I can give you quality predictions as we go through Week 17 here. So for Week 16, I did get a couple games wrong. I was 11-5. As you can see, a lot of them were in the later slate games. I was wrong about the Eagles beating the Commanders, which I'm very, very happy about, as you can imagine. The Panthers beat the Cardinals. The Raiders beat the Jaguars in the Tank Bowl. Dolphins beat the 49ers. And shockingly, the Cowboys beat the Buccaneers, which was a big surprise to me. I mean, that was a game that the Buccaneers really, really needed to win. And they didn't. So for the season, I am 171 and 69. Nice. But, you know, as it says again, the predictions keep getting better. I get a positive ratio every single time. We're getting near the end of it, so my final predictions for the end of the season are approaching. So I think it's safe to say I'm going to end above 500, shall we say. So let's kick things off with Wednesday, as we have two games going on Christmas. So these games are all four teams played on Saturday. I think that's just to give them that extra day of rest so they don't have to go from Sunday to Wednesday. It's a quick turnaround time regardless. But we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Chiefs beat the Texans 27-19 in one of their better victories. You know, it wasn't by one possession. And the Steelers lost out to the Ravens 34-17. Now, that was a tough loss by the Steelers. I had the Ravens winning still, but I thought the Steelers were going to put up a better fight than that. They were just outplayed, to put it simply, by Lamar Jackson and primarily Derrick Henry, who had like 160 rushing yards, something ridiculous like that. In this game, I think the Steelers are going to drop another L. Their schedule was going to be extremely difficult going in to these last couple weeks because it's the Chiefs and like all divisional games, and I think much of the same is going to happen. The Chiefs are playing their best football now. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they played the Browns last week. They played the Texans now, and these are two games in a row where they haven't won by a single possession, last-minute field goal, last-minute game-winning drive. The Chiefs are starting to play their best football, and I think that's incredibly dangerous for some of these teams. These people who have been taking the Chiefs lightly all season, like, who are you going against? You're going against Patrick Mahomes. He may not have the best stats in the world this year, but if he has 7 game-winning drives and like 6 fourth-quarter comebacks, that again is a testament to his greatness. Like Peyton Manning won an MVP by having lukewarm stats and having like 8 game-winning drives. Like game-winning drives. Like he won the game. And that mainly just shows how clutch he is. So I'm going to leave the Chiefs on this one. They're going to win, and they're going to improve to 15-1. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the Houston Texans. The Baltimore Ravens had a very good get-right game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, showing people that they may be 10-5. They may have lost 5 games, but they can still beat anyone in the league. Lamar Jackson had a great game. He was 15 of 23 for 207 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception for 115.4 passer rating. And then, Derrick Henry does it again. 24 carries for 162 yards. He averaged 6.8 yards a carry. He is up to 1,600 rushing yards for the season, which ordinarily would be good enough to lead the league in rushing, but Saquon Barkley is having an all-time great running back season next to Derrick Henry. So, Saquon is kind of stealing a lot of the shine away from Derrick Henry, but not to be ignored, he is still having an incredible season. As for the Houston Texans, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs pretty convincingly. They now drop to 9-6. There was a lot of intrigue on the Houston Texans, how they were going to build on their success that they had last season with Rookie of the Year CJ Stroud. And they're doing all right, but they are not playing to the level that a lot of people thought they were going to. They didn't take that next big step. And now teams are more prepared for it, and it's kind of resulted in the Texans having a very lukewarm season. They're very fortunate they're in as weak of a division as they are. Like, for crying out loud, the Titans and Jaguars are vying for a top 5 draft spot. That's 4 wins for the Texans every year right now, even though they lost to the Texans 1 week. Not the Texans, they lost to the Titans a couple weeks ago. But the Texans have not impressed me this year. C.J. Stroud was 23 of 39 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 73 passer rating. So another lukewarm game by Mr. C.J. Stroud. I don't think it's because C.J. Stroud isn't a good quarterback. I think it's just because he's going through a sophomore slump. It happens to the best of them. I still think he's a great quarterback. It remains to be seen what he's going to be able to do next year and in the playoffs. But I'm going with the Ravens on this one. I believe now they are the number 3 seed. No, they're not still. Conference win percentage still favors the Steelers. But if this win happens, then that means that the Ravens are going to take their rightful spot on the top of the division as the number 3 seed. They're finishing the season very strong. They're finishing the season like we expected them to. And they're under the radar this year going into the postseason in the AFC. And I wouldn't be surprised if they cause some surprises and they upset some teams. So I'm going with Ravens on that one. Okay, so immediately after that, we go into Thursday night, the Seattle Seahawks at the Chicago Bears. So the Seahawks are starting to fade away a little bit in this playoff race. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings. That brings their record down to 8-7. Now, they're still a full game behind the Rams. They're not going to catch the Commanders in a playoff spot because the Commanders won, making it 10-5. So right now, it's just going to be a matter of if the Rams can hold on to that wild card spot. And we will see who the Rams play this week to see if they're in a position to lose that game. But right now, this is something that the Seahawks need to win. Once again, Geno Smith was 31 of 43, 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 96.5 passer rating. Not a bad game by Geno, but he's having kind of a very mediocre starting quarterback year. And I think that they're getting to a point now where Geno Smith being the starting quarterback for Seattle is starting to fade away a little bit. And they might need to start looking at who their next quarterback is going to be. So I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted someone and let them sit. And then when Geno starts to really fade, they slot in their new quarterback. The Seahawks have been a very stable franchise the last 20 years with the success with Mike Holmgren and Pete Carroll. So just something to think about with that they are doing better. As for the Bears, they lost another game to the Lions, 34-17. I mean, not much is going on with the Bears. They are having a very disappointing season that's only being rivaled by the New York Jets. That being said, Caleb Williams was 26 of 40 for 334 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 107.7 passer rating. And then Keenan Allen had 9 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. So this is what's unfortunate. Is like Caleb Williams was having some troubles early on in the season, throwing some bad picks, having some bad games. But these last couple games, he has played well. So I think Caleb Williams is the solution for the Bears at quarterback because it's clear that he's not a talentless bust. He clearly has something to him, and he's getting better as the season goes on. He's just a part of a really bad team that is giving him no chance to succeed, which is very, very interesting. And it's very unfortunate, right? But like the Seahawks are still going to win. Like the Bears have not won. They were 4-2 at one point, and they were on the verge of dropping 10 straight losses ever since that Hail Mary game. And that's a collapse like I have not seen ever. Like it boggles the mind. But that being said, I'm going to go with the Seahawks on this one. They're going to win. Tough loss for the Bears, but they were made an example of by the Lions, showing people that they're still a very tough team to beat. They still have the highest point differential in the NFL. They are currently, if I can just look here, the Lions are at a 194 point differential. And anytime a team makes it to a positive 200 point differential, they are a pretty damn good team. So we'll go over point differentials as we go over the power rankings in the playoff picture, obviously. But as it stands right now, I'm going with the Seahawks. Next game, we have the Los Angeles Chargers at the New England Patriots. I'm going to glance over this one a little bit, but the Chargers had a very good showing against the Denver Broncos. They were kind of in similar positions, the Chargers and the Broncos, because the Chargers are the 6th seed, the Broncos are the 7th seed. Like, you know, who is the real phony? Who's the real one? The fraud, really. We found out that it was the Broncos as the Chargers beat them 34-27. If I remember the game correctly, Denver came out swinging. They did very well, but then the Chargers came back and ended up winning the game. Justin Herbert was 23 of 31 for 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 110.1 passer rating. Gus Edwards had 14 carries for 68 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, which is very nice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The Chargers are going to win this game. It's going to be very easy. The Patriots, I mean, they're in some trouble here. Like Gerard Mayo was the standard bearer of like he's taking over, but he hasn't looked the best in terms of coaching for them. Drake May looks pretty good, but they still look like a rebuilding team, and they run the risk of making their rebuild turn them into like a 7 or 8 win team, having that be a failed rebuild, and then going back and trying to rebuild again. That happened to the Commanders a couple times. I think it's currently happening to the Cardinals. But what a world we live in where the Patriots are no longer a dynasty without Brady, and they are just a bad team, which is what they've been for the majority of their franchise, ironically speaking. So they're just going back to how they were. And I'm going with the Chargers. So next up, we have the Denver Broncos at the Cincinnati Bengals. A game between a 9-6 playoff team and a 7-8 in the hunt team actually is very interesting. The main reason for this is I saw a video saying how the Bengals could technically make it into the playoffs. And this is their scenario. So one, the Bengals have to win out. They play against the Broncos this week, and the Steelers next week. Kind of doable. Number two, the Broncos have to lose out. So first and foremost, if the Bengals beat the Broncos, they're halfway there. And then the Broncos play the Chiefs. Very doable. Then the Dolphins need to lose at least one more game. They play the Browns and the Jets. That's a bit more difficult. I don't really see that happening. And then the Colts have to lose at least one more game too, to the Giants or the Jaguars. Now, if that happens, then that's a very bad loss for the Colts. But there is still a reality where the Bengals can manage to stay in this and make the playoffs at 7-8. They beat the Browns 24-6, which is a big feather in the cap, particularly for their defense, which can't stop a wet paper bag. Joe Burrow was 23 of 30, 252 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 134.3 passer rating. And then Jamar Chase had 6 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown, which is another impressive showing by Jamar Chase. Again, their offense is doing well. It's just their defense is selling them out. It's just that simple. As for the Broncos, they lost to the Chargers, and they are running the risk of having their season fall up from under them. They need to win this game against the Bengals because the Chiefs are going to be a tough one for them. And if they collapse down the stretch at this season, dropping 3 straight and missing a playoff appearance for the first time in almost a decade, that's going to be very embarrassing. However, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think the Broncos are going to win this game, all things considered. I think they are going to beat the Bengals, and I think that would officially eliminate the Bengals from playoff contention. And so would end one of the more disappointing things this season is the Bengals not delivering. They need to reload, and they need to get back to getting a strong defense. But the good news is, if they have Joe Burrow, they have their franchise quarterback, they will always be contenders because they have a franchise quarterback. They need to build up their defense, and they might be able to do it. So we'll wait and see. I'm going with the Broncos. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. The Cardinals lost an overtime showing against the Carolina Panthers, 36-30. Tough game there. And the Rams beat the Jets 19-9, which is just like, okay, I guess. It's really weird because the Rams will go out and they'll beat the Bills, score 40 points, and then they'll barely beat the Jets. So I don't know what's going on with the Rams. They're very inconsistent, but they managed to win. Kyron Williams had a good game, 23 carries, 122 yards, and a touchdown. He's doing very well. I'd say he's probably the 3rd best running back in the league right now. So, you know, it's very interesting to see like what'll happen with that. But right now they are first in their division. They are set to, if they win this game, I think they clinch technically. The Cardinals had a good showing, but what I'm seeing with the Cardinals is a failed rebuild. What do I mean by that? They bottomed out, they got a new coach, they got all this stuff, and now their rebuild is in full swing, but they only are a 7 or 8 win team. That's a failed rebuild. If that's their ceiling under this new regime, then Jonathan Gannon's going to get fired, they're going to bottom out again, and then they're back to square one. That happened to the Washington Commanders under Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera came in, They were 7-9. They made the playoffs in 2020. Then the next couple years, they were this close to competing. They were a 7-win team. They were an 8-win team. And then they fell back down to earth and were 3-14 and were fucking garbage. And then they had to restart, get a new regime. Thankfully, it worked this time, but that's what a failed rebuild looks like. And I see that with the Cardinals. I don't think they're going to beat the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win. They're going to improve to 10-6 and get a firmer grasp on the division. So I'm going with the Rams. Next up, we have the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to be very brief with this one, too. The Bills are going to win. They are the best team in the AFC right now, I would say. No, actually, I'd say the Chiefs are, but the Bills aren't too far behind. They are a very, very strong, solid team. And I think that they're just going to take care of business against the Jets. It's weird because Aaron Rodgers has been doing pretty well recently. I think that he's not as washed as other people, he's not as washed as people say he is. Washed is what is happening with Kirk Cousins this year. Washed is what happened to Matt Ryan last year. Washed is 2015 Peyton Manning when his body was just giving up on him. Aaron Rodgers is not washed yet. He can still throw the ball. He can still find the open man. I just think he can't overcome the Jets. It's that simple. He can't overcome the Jets. And that is the biggest issue with the Jets right now. And I think if Aaron Rodgers went to a different team, a more competent team, I actually think he would do well. Like, I am sticking with that. I actually think he would do well. It's just the Jets are such a dumpster fire that a first ballot, 4-time MVP Hall of Famer can't elevate them out of being the New York Jets. That's what I'm seeing right now. That's what I see from the New York Jets. So I am going with the Bills on this one. They are going to win. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. So this game is going to be very, very interesting because these are two powerhouse teams. The Packers beat the Saints pretty badly last week. It wasn't even close. They dominated. They're now 11-4. The Vikings were 13-2. So, I mean, they are both comfortably in the wild card race. The Packers have a 126-point differential, and the Minnesota Vikings have a 120-point differential. These are two very, very good teams. And Packers are a borderline top 5 power ranking team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made some strides going forward in the playoffs. The Packers are what everyone expected the Texans to be, where they had success last year and they built on it the following year. Now, the Vikings had a great showing against the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Darnold was 22 of 35, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, 112.3 passer rating. Justin Jefferson had 10 receptions for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that the Vikings are going to win. And in regard to Sam Darnold, the way I see it, trade J.J. McCarthy for draft picks. Go with Sam Darnold. Sign him long-term. Because here's the thing. Like, say you do go with J.J. McCarthy. Like, the best case scenario with him is he plays like how Sam Darnold is playing now. Right? Like, they're a 13-win team. Sam Darnold's having an MVP caliber season. Like, the Vikings are they're a game away from first place. If the Lions lose and the Vikings win, the Vikings are in first place. This is the best case scenario for them. You know, so like, why mess it up? You have everything you could possibly want in a quarterback with how Sam Darnold played this year. So you just got to sign him. You just got to go for it. You know, like, you can't ask for anything more out of a quarterback. And the thing is, he's not old. It's not even like he's in his 30s like Geno Smith. He's 27 years old. He's still very young. I said this last week. He could be your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. Realistically, he could be your quarterback for the next 10 years. So I would say just go for him. Have him be your guy. But the Vikings are going to win, and I think that they are scary good now that they stumbled upon their franchise quarterback. I'm going with the Vikings. It's going to be a very good game, and the Packers aren't going to get embarrassed by any means. But the Vikings are going to win a very close nip-and-tuck drag-out game. Going with the Vikings. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at the New Orleans Saints. I mean, the Raiders can't even tank properly. They lost to the they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 19-14. I mean, the Raiders are who they are. They're a poverty franchise. They've been irrelevant for the last 25 years, ever since they lost that Super Bowl to the Buccaneers. They desperately need ownership change. They desperately need something because they have been a dumpster fire. I'm going with the Saints. They're going to win. It's a pointless game. And if the Raiders win, all they're doing is taking their draft stock. Like when they were 9-8 last year and they went on those wins at the end of the season, this is what you get saddled with. You win meaningless games in December. You don't get good draft picks. And then you end up just being even worse the year before. Like, I'm glad I'm not a Raiders fan because the Commanders used to be where the Raiders are now. We finally managed to escape that. But it's going to be a while, I think, before the Raiders do. So I'm going with the Saints. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the New York Giants. Again, I'm going with the Colts on this one. The Giants lost 34-7 against the Atlanta Falcons with a rookie quarterback having his first start. Not much to say about that. Jonathan Taylor had one of his best games ever. 29 carries, 218 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had a 70-yard rushing touchdown, and thankfully he didn't drop the ball on the goal line either. It's really funny. I was watching the game, and the commentator was like, "Oh, don't drop it." It's funny stuff. But Jonathan Taylor had a very good performance. The Colts are 7-8, and they have a minus 41 point differential. Somehow they're still technically alive, but they are irrelevant, beyond irrelevant. So they're going to beat the Giants, but it's not really going to make much of a difference. So I'm going with the Colts. They're going to win. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. They're playing in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had a really tough loss against the Dallas Cowboys, 26-24. They needed to win that game, and it's a bit unfortunate that they did because right now the Falcons are somehow still the number 4 seed in the NFC South. They have not played good at all this year. They have a minus 22 point differential. The Buccaneers have a positive 75. So it's clear the Buccaneers are the better team, but they can't get out of their own way apparently. That was going to be a layup victory for them, I thought, and they blew it. So this is a game that they need to win, but that being said, the Panthers are trending in the right direction. They are doing very, very admirably. Bryce Young was 17 of 26, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, 107.5 passer rating. Very good. Chuba Hubbard had 25 carries for 152 yards for 2 rushing touchdowns. So this is exactly what, they did beat the Cardinals, but we're seeing a lot of encouraging things from the Panthers at the end of this year. Bryce Young is starting to put it together. They're starting to find their way out of the darkness a little bit. They're still not a very good team, but all eyes are going to be on the Panthers going into 2025 to see how much they improve. You know what I mean? They're starting to get some confidence around their team. Now, I could see the upset happening, especially because these are divisional rivals, but I don't see the Buccaneers dropping 2 straight games like this. I really think they are going to win. They need to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive, although I don't think the Falcons are going to win their game, which we'll go over in a little bit, but I am going with the Buccaneers on this one. I think they're going to win. So we have another tank bowl here, the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars somehow managed to lose to the Raiders. That says it all, doesn't it? I don't know why Doug Peterson still has a job. I mean, you could have fired him midseason and started your rebuild this year. That's what happened with the Commanders when they traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young. They started their rebuild for 2024 in 2023. The Jaguars should have done that. They have a franchise quarterback who we still don't know how good he actually is because he's on such a bad team. But they have a franchise quarterback, which is more than I can say for the Titans, who are wheeling out Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. So, they scored 30 points against the Colts and almost won. So for that reason, I actually think I am going to go with the Titans on this one. But, both these teams are just not anything. And the Titans are a long ways away from competing. So I'm going with the Titans, though. I do think they're going to win. It's a tank bowl. They're just going to be slightly less bad than the Jaguars. All right, guys. So next up, we have the Miami Dolphins at the Cleveland Browns. The Dolphins beat the 49ers 29-17. It might be a little too late for them. I do think they are going to beat the Browns, just to throw that out there. The Browns had a pretty poor showing against the Bengals. Jerome Ford had a pretty good game, had a long rushing touchdown, but that was about it. I'm going with the Dolphins on this one. They're going to win, but again, they're 7-8. It might be too late unless the Broncos lose out and the Dolphins win out. If that happens, then that means that the Broncos will be 9-8 and the Dolphins will be 9-8. I don't know if that's going to be enough for the Dolphins to win because I don't know if they have like similar opponents or what, but it's entirely possible that could happen. I'm going with the Dolphins. They're going to beat the Browns. I'd be shocked if they lost. So with this next game, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles lost out to the Washington Commanders in our biggest win of the season, but there's a bit of an asterisk on that because Jalen Hurts was injured. We'll take the win. We still play well against the number one defense in the league. So there's a lot to be said about that. But the Eagles are going to win this one. Saquon Barkley had another great game, 29 carries, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a long rushing touchdown against us. He's Offensive Player of the Year, without a doubt. He's still playing phenomenal football. He's not going to break the rushing record, even though people still think he's going to. Like, I don't think he is going to. But he's doing very well. The Eagles are doing very well. I think they're going to take this loss on the chin because the whole reason why they lost is because their starting quarterback was out. I'm a Commanders fan. I will even admit that. But I'm going with the Eagles. They're going to win, and they're going to get another win back on the win column after losing to us. All right, guys. It's getting a little hot in here, which is why I took off the jacket because it's our Sunday night game. It is the Atlanta Falcons at the Washington Commanders. So, as I said in the previous prediction, the Washington Commanders beat the Philadelphia Eagles 36-33. The game looked like it was going to be a slaughter from the very beginning because the Eagles came out, bit us in the mouth, punched us in the mouth. We're up 14-0. We scored a touchdown, then they scored another touchdown. It was 21-7 at the end of the first quarter. Jaden Daniels was playing all right, but he threw 2 bad interceptions. When he threw that second interception, I was like, all right, this game's over. We didn't give up. The defense played well. We benefited from having Kenny Pickett playing instead. The Eagles couldn't move the ball very, very well. And they were resilient. They had 5 turnovers, and they still won. Jaden Daniels was 24 of 39, 258 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 99.1 passer rating. I don't care if Kenny Pickett was in the game and played. What I saw from Jaden Daniels was a clutch performer performing under pressure against the number 1 defense in the league. Let's not forget that. Jalen Hurts is out, but that doesn't take away from the Eagles having the number 1 defense in the league. And that's why this win is still very encouraging because Jaden Daniels was clutch in this game. The defense helped, but he moved the ball down the field. He came back. He had that clutch 4th down run, 4th and 11, ran for it. Like, Offensive Rookie of the Year isn't a big enough accomplishment for him. Like, I think he should get MVP votes. He's not the MVP, but, like, he's better than RG3 ever was in 2012. And I firmly believe that because RG3 was a merchant for the read option. He needed the read option to succeed. But Jaden Daniels threw the ball 39 times. He is a pocket passer. He's not a guy that runs first and has to pass when he needs to. He is a pass-first quarterback that can run when he needs to. He is, like, I can't, like, it boggles the mind how much of a finished product this guy is. It is amazing. I can't believe it. And, like, he's our guy. Barring a huge injury, which we got to protect him at all costs, Jaden Daniels is our guy. And it feels good to say that. We're 10-5. This is the best record we've had since 1991. We won the Super Bowl that year, and we have one of the best teams in NFL history. Now, that's not us, but this goes to show this is the best season the Commanders, the Redskins, the Washington football team has had in the last 30 years since 1991. And that's saying a lot. Like, this is better than the 2012 team ever was. They have a chance to become an 11 or even 12-win team. So now we just need to see if we can win a playoff game, right? But we're getting hot at the right time. The team is still at the top of their game. They're not limping into the playoffs, which I was afraid was going to happen when they dropped those 3 games. Jaden Daniels had the rib injury. He came back. He's healthy now, and he picked right up where he left off. Like, that's so impressive that people were like, you know, he did well early in the season. Now defense are catching up to him. He's not playing as well. He was hurt. His ribs were still injured. It was blatantly obvious how he was playing and versus how he's playing now, right? So he's Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's the franchise. He's the man. We're going against the Falcons, who did beat the Giants. Michael Penix's first game didn't go all that well. It was 18 to 27 for 202 yards and an interception for a 73.4 passer rating. I definitely think you've got to go with Michael Penix over Kirk Cousins. He is your future quarterback, and they seem pretty smart after they made that pick to get Michael Penix. I don't know what they were thinking at the time, but hindsight's 2020, and hindsight says they made the right move by drafting him, because now Kirk Cousins is going to get cut. He is washed, and I don't know if he's going to get a job next year, but the Falcons can kind of seamlessly transition and say, all right, Kirk didn't work. Now we can put everything in this rookie quarterback that we're hoping is going to be a finished project. The Falcons season hasn't gone exactly how they expected it to, but they are still in the lead for their division, even though they have a minus 22 point differential and they have not played the best. They are still winning their division. Whoever is the number 5 seed, which I believe is that's the Vikings. That's going to be a mismatch. In the other way, opposite direction, with the number 5 seed being better. But I'm going with the Commanders on this one. Like, I genuinely think we should win that game. We're going against the rookie quarterback. Jaden Daniels is on the top of this game. It's at home. We have an extra day to rest. Well, we have extra evening. Let's make it 11-5, guys. Let's make it 11-5. It's a game we frankly should win. I'm going with the Commanders. Let's freaking do it. Last but definitely not least, we have the Detroit Lions at the San Francisco 49ers. Once again, the Lions took care of business against the Chicago Bears. They scored 34 points. Here is the stat line for you. Jared Goff was 23 of 32, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 137 passer rating. Jahmyr Gibbs, 23 carries for 109 yards and a touchdown. And then Jamison Williams, 5 receptions for 143 yards and a touchdown. They did what they do. The Lions are very injured, but they are still winning these games by a lot. I think losing David Montgomery was the biggest hit for them. But they're still making it happen somehow, which is very admirable of them. As for the 49ers, they are officially eliminated. Brock Purdy had a decent game, but they lost to the Dolphins. Their Super Bowl window appears to be closing, and it's kind of sad, but kind of funny at the same time. They didn't walk away from all this success without a ring. So there's that. And I think that the Detroit Lions are going to win. They're going to improve to 14-2. This is the best Detroit Lions team of all time. And the big question is can they get it done in the playoffs? That's going to be the big question. I want them to make the Super Bowl. We'll see if that happens. So that rounds out the picks for Week 17. A lot of crazy stuff is happening. I am going to first go over the power rankings, and I'm just going to blast through them again. The Eagles did lose, so I'm not going to have them at number 1 right now. I'm going to put the Lions at number 1 once again, bumping them back up to number 1. Highest point differential. They also have a very high strength of schedule, and they have they have a really high simple rating system, which is like a big mathematical equation to see like team quality relative to average and all that. It's a big math nerd thing, but they have a high simple rating system, which means that not only are they beating good teams, but they're beating them hard and they're beating them, well. So Lions are number 1. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I mean, the scary part about the Chiefs is now they're no longer winning games by 1 possession anymore. They are looking like a team that's dominating. They just haven't looked the best, but like they're still 14-1. You can't discount the Chiefs. So they're number 2. Number 3, I'm still going to go with the Eagles. They're still a great team. They lost because Jalen Hurts was injured, to put it simply. He left the game with a concussion. I'm going to be completely honest, guys. I don't think we win that game if Jalen Hurts keeps playing. So we're very fortunate that happened. That doesn't take away from all the positivity that we saw from Jaden Daniels playing, though, which is why there are a lot of positive takeaways from that game. Number 4, I'm going to go Buffalo Bills. Number 5, I'm going to go Minnesota Vikings. The Bills and Vikings are still two great teams, but they're number 4 and 5 just because of what the Lions have been able to do, the fact that the Chiefs are still dangerous, and the fact that the Eagles may have lost, but they lost because they were playing their backup quarterback, and there's no reason why they still shouldn't be considered one of the best teams in the league. So, Lions, Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, Vikings. That's my top 5 in power rankings. With that being said, we go to the playoff picture. This is the AFC here for the playoff picture. The Chiefs are still number 1, and it looks like they're going to be locking in the number 1 seed. If they win another playoff game and make it to the conference championship, that is 7 straight seasons that Patrick Mahomes, and it's every year he's started since 2018, he's made it to at least the conference championship. This streak that Mahomes is on is unbelievable, and it makes him a top 5 all-time quarterback, in my opinion, if he retires today. So what he's been doing is just boggles the mind. We got to appreciate it while we have it. One of the best players to ever play the game is playing right now. Anyway, what I'm looking at right now is some big changes. Is the Ravens may take the AFC North from the Steelers this week. If the Ravens win and the Steelers lose, which is very possible, we'll know that result by the end of tomorrow. As I record this, it's Christmas Eve. And then, like, you saw the scenario with the Bengals potentially still making the playoffs, and the Dolphins and Colts are not eliminated either. So I think a lot of it just comes from the Broncos. I think the Chargers are going to be okay. I think the Broncos really run the risk of losing out. They need to beat the Bengals, but they could lose that game, and I don't see them beating the Chiefs. So if any one of those 3 teams, the Colts, Dolphins, or Bengals, win out, I think they might steal the 7th seed right from under the Broncos' chin. And Brandon Perna, world-renowned Broncos fan, is going to be very upset about that. So that's the AFC. Going over to the NFC, a lot of this has been solidified, especially with that Commanders victory. The only big thing is maybe the Minnesota Vikings can jump from the 5th seed to the 1 seed if they win and the Lions lose in one of these next 2 games. And then the only other big thing that could happen is if the Rams lose out, the Seahawks might still be able to make it. I didn't realize this, but the Cowboys are 7-8, which I think is pretty crazy that they've been able to continue to make this happen, but they're still eliminated. Not much more they can do about that. And then it's the Buccaneers and the Seahawks that are the 2 teams that are still alive right now, and they're desperately trying to steal the division from the Rams and Falcons, respectively. I think that the Falcons are going to be in some big danger for that because the Buccaneers are playing a weaker team. The Falcons are playing a tough team in the Washington Commanders. So there's a chance that the Buccaneers supersede them and make it to the into their divisional spot. If the season were to end now, the Commanders will be playing the Eagles once again. So that's gonna be a very, very tough one. If we win and the Packers lose, then we kind of move back up a little bit. I think it'd be great if we make the number 6 seed because then we would face the number 3 seed. Whether that's going to be the Seahawks or the Rams, I think that's a lot more of a winnable game for us than if we went against the Eagles with a healthy Jalen Hurts. I'm a realist. But that is the playoff picture. We're coming down to the nitty-gritty. This is the second to last week of the regular season, which is kind of sad because that means that football season's almost over. But we're approaching the playoffs, and it's very exciting when your team is in the playoff picture and you have a chance to win a playoff game. So I've been Lampini. Thanks again so much for watching, you guys. I love making these videos for you guys. I'm going to try and make some videos in the off season because I truly love making this content for you guys. I'll see you guys later.